Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is going to be our fifth episode. I'm so happy we are finally doing this. I've been wanting to focus on something to do with mental health, overall well-being, how we handle tough situations, the changes in society right now with the recession and, people are losing their jobs, people, especially in the nonprofit sector, with the US aid cuts, a lot of people are trying to change, change their careers, and yeah, it's been tough, and many times because people have families, it's not just about you as a person yourself, it's about also your family. So whatever happens to you happens to your family as well. If you're going through difficulties, then that means your family is going through difficulties as well. So it's like a community thing. And the reason I wanted to do this and to do this in this way, where we have African ancestry people using their own various ways of dealing with issues that affect the community and society, is because I think we tend to forget that many of the issues that happen in the world, number one, they are all man-made. But we also forget that moving away from the way we have traditionally dealt with some issues, it kind of exacerbates them. So I intentionally want to go back to finding ways that we can be able to just, go back to what our ancestors did. If you had an issue, did you go to your grandmother or did you go to your mother first? Did you go to your father? We're having a lot of issues with men as well now. More about their mental health, but then we don't really focus on the traditional ways that we did this. And I think it's very important to kind of look at all these things. So I'm not just thinking about people losing their jobs. I'm not just thinking about young people seeing their rights being taken away from them. People who identify in every different way. They're very scared right now, especially in the US. I want to think about also even men, like I just mentioned. Men we are discussing this a bit more, where men are being open and they're saying that, what, this is what we're experiencing. We feel this loneliness, but then we are seeing all this, this podcast thing where the bro podcast there, and many of them that I've seen are not very helpful, because they're teaching them things that are going to be harmful not just to them but to society as well. So I think we need to go back to our roots. That's the best way I can say it. Let's go back to our roots as African ancestry people, and let's see how we have dealt with these issues, and let's also see how we communicate with each other, how we interact with one another, and just make sure that people are not left out, because a lot of people are feeling a bit left out. So I think we can begin with Vibya. So I'm very happy to announce that we have, as usual, an African ancestry panel. So we have people from different countries. So we have Kenya represented, we have South Sudan represented, Canada and Finland as well, because of where we live. We have South Africa represented. So I would want for all of them to just kind of give us a foundation of what they do, why they do it, and how it benefits what we're discussing here today. Because I think a lot of people, like I mentioned, people are being more open with what they're experiencing, their mental health issues and what they're facing in society. But we need to also know who to go to. Whom do we speak to? If I'm in Canada or if I'm in the West, whom do I speak to, or whom do I go to? Where can I find the kind of people who are educating us or supporting us? When you're in Africa, you need to know, okay, fine, we have a person in Kenya. Waithera is doing this. We have someone else in another country. So this is why I try to have people of African descent, but from different parts of the world. That way we are not leaving too many people out. So I think I'm talking too much, but I will let Vibya is going to go first, and she's going to introduce herself. She's going to tell us what she's doing, and then she's going to lead her segment. It's going to be around 30 minutes. And then next, we're going to have Dr. Mazibuko, who's going to come in next. And then after that, we're going to have Waithera Karanja. So I will let you have the floor, Vibya. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much for having me here and inviting me into this space as well. It's such an honor, and I'll get into why as I go on into explaining who I am and all of that as well. But as I was introduced, my name is Vibya Natana. I am South Sudanese, both from the Muru ethnic group in Western Equatoria region, and then also from the Kakwa ethnic group as well on my mother's side, as well in South Sudan. So these are all part of the Equatorian regions in the southernmost part of South Sudan. And in terms of the trajectory of how did I find myself in one of the coldest provinces of within Canada that gets up to minus 45 degrees at some points in time. After, yes, Mary, exactly, yeah. And the trajectory from that is very much so linked to what we're talking about today is what is the importance of being able to have an understanding of how to ground yourself during times that are whether precarious or just during challenging times as many of us are experiencing globally here today. So in terms of how my family found their way here, it's all interlinked into this this conversation as well. So just to kind of preface for anyone who's you may be watching this back, or even if you're here in this conversation, is that the way in which I hope to share not only the conversation of the main topic of today's discussion in terms of my perspective around cultural transmission as being a key part of what healing practices look like for communities during challenging times, is also linked to my own personal story in terms of the history of South Sudan, what displacement looks like, and all of those things as being intertwined. So if you see me jumping between personal, what seems like personal history, you know, the history of our community as well, it's because I see those things as one and the same. So in terms of, my family's journey to Canada, it started with my parents having the opportunity to be able to have a way out during the civil war that was taking place and fleeing to India as international students during the 90s, fleeing from the war that was taking place in South Sudan, Sudan at the time. And studying there for a collective span of around 13 years before then seeking asylum as refugees in Canada. And then from there, relocating from major populous province to the prairies, again, in search of work opportunities and such. And during that time was also a period when there was a lot of migration from Sudan into other Western countries as well, predominantly Australia, the United States, Canada, and then also the UK region as well. So when it comes to what we're all talking about today, I'm coming from the perspective of someone who's been involved in community development, particularly with a focus on youth development, and as well looking at how youth development, as well as like working within community and also the importance of culture are really essential to being able to understand what it means to maintain healthy practices. And this is not just in the sense of only mental health, but also looking at just general well-being as a community as well. So for anyone who might not be familiar with specifically what cultural transition means as a term, we're really just looking at the idea that when someone has an understanding and a rooting in your origin story, the stories of your languages, your values, what it means to be yourself within your culture, even if you're not necessarily there on the land, which is important to me as someone who's grown up in diaspora and as a young person. I'm 24 years old. And what that means in terms of understanding who you are, even if you haven't grown up necessarily in the context of your original homelands as well. So understanding that, then this also recognizes too that aspect of what does it mean to then look at the timeline of everything that's happened and how that influences what's going on today. So jumping a little bit back as well in terms of the history of Sudan and how we found ourselves again in this place and what that looks like. So just a bit of like maybe a crash course, but of course recognizing too that this history is ongoing and also extremely, I don't want to say complex in a way to make it seem like it's different than the complexities of any other world history, but just in the sense of, again, family, individual experiences also have a role to play in what these histories look like for different individuals too. So I'm just going at it at a kind of higher level, but in terms of what pre-colonial Sudan looked like, we have many different ethnic groups, and I think one of the things that's widely understood by anyone who's coming to talk about just the history of what Africa looks like and has looked like is that these borders have no hold on what it means to be from your original place. We often talk about the fact that we share ethnic groups across several different countries. For example, on my mother's side, being Kakwa, from that ethnic group, that group is spread out across Congo, South Sudan, and Uganda as well, with this same cultures, varying in all these different regions. So what does that exactly mean for then the ways in which the colonial impact has then spread throughout the country? Well, that has also resulted in then a lot of the deep fractures that we're still experiencing today, in the sense of looking at the impact of the major civil wars that took place. So first looking at in 1955 and the impact of that all the way until 1972. And then the Second Civil War also taking place between the years of 1983 to around 2005, leading to a lot of mass displacement as well. So when it comes to the story of then, I'm going to be speaking also more so around the experience of South Sudanese Canadians in diaspora here, and what that experience has been like when it comes to cultural transmission and being able to access that as a source of strength. In the 1980s was when a lot of the initial migration to Canada took place for the South Sudanese community. And when it came to the initial experiences, and this is oftentimes seen in terms of migration studies for a lot of different communities. It's not unique to South Sudanese, but I'll speak from that place, as that's what I know best, of course, is that that understanding of when you're in a new place, when something is happening and you're in crisis mode, oftentimes the first instinct is to grab hold of what you know. And at that time, it was the community, understanding that these are the people that you know best. We have our traditions. And we need each other at this time where it's very evident that the systems that are in place were not put in place with an understanding of who we are, what our needs are, and how we operate as a communal structure. Perhaps these things might be set up in a way that only recognizes the nuclear family as parents and immediate children, knowing that we oftentimes live in multi-generational households, having to kind of squeeze and fit those molds in order to be able to access necessary services and survive. So going through all of those things and really relying heavily, those of us that were either brought into Canada or born in Canada, as I was myself, born in Saskatchewan, and in the early 2000s and late 90s, we're also recipients in some ways of that experience, what it means to rely on culture and community out of necessity. And there's pros of that. There's also some cons to that as well, in terms of being able to really understand, like, okay, we are coming together maybe every weekend. We call them oftentimes hall parties. Every weekend you're getting together with your community informally, formally, sharing music, sharing culture, food, all of these different things. And for a lot of that was where a lot of the language transmission as well occurred too. So regardless of whether or not you as a nuclear family maybe had access to the funds to be able to put your child in all these extracurricular activities, take them to all of these different places, to set up formal play dates with friends at school, you knew that there was a guaranteed social point at which you would be able to engage with your peers, whether this was moms, dads, children. There was some meeting point, even if it wasn't formally arranged, that you could expect to connect with your culture, even in the midst of having to be part of the hustle and bustle of the Canadian society in order to keep up and get integrated in that sense. But then things change. This is, again, something that's noticed as a pattern within immigrant communities and diaspora, is that you have that initial period where you're trying to adjust. The learning curve may be extremely steep, and there's a deep reliance on what it means to be part of that community and identify with it. Those waves change. So you'll see that now we're entering almost 30 to 35 years of our existence in this country in diaspora. The experience of what it means to then be part of community has also shifted. We've gone through periods as well of what it means to then find yourself at a place of maybe what some might consider to be stability, in which it becomes almost individualistic, where you're looking at the community as being a nice to have versus a necessity. Before it was, I need to rely on these individuals because those are my people. I am part of them as much as they are a part of me, and our functioning and our growth is dependent on each other. And then it became, okay, well, I'm looking at these other communities, whether it's other African communities, other multicultural communities from all around the world, and looking at how they operate. And for some, thinking that from the outside, I should say, thinking that their success is dependent on focusing strictly on the individual and the nuclear unit, not knowing that behind the scenes, these individuals are extremely communal and helping each other in ways that are also deeply systemic as well, that we might not recognize, thinking that everybody is pulling themselves up by their bootstraps on an individual level because perhaps that's what's being advertised, little to maybe some of our knowledge, right? So some people thinking that perhaps that's the strategy, abandon the community, abandon that collective ideology, and try to focus on the individual. And with a lot of that as well, finding the challenges of that. One example that I can really point to that I think is also seen across several different communities as well is what that looked like during the pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic, in terms of the impact on mental health and the well-being of communities in diaspora, was extremely catastrophic. You're looking at individuals, many of whom are already just challenged in terms of what it means to, we already talked about how the role of culture in terms of maybe putting that on the back burner as a nice to have was already something that people were doing for several different reasons. Not all of it was out of survival. For some of it, it also comes out of the personal challenges of trying to balance what it means to be part of your ethnic identity, but then also integrating with the larger society here. And for some people, that can also bring personal hardships as well, which I don't want to gloss over. But then in the sense of the pandemic as well, during that time, then of course led to a lot of exacerbation of some of the different social issues that we were seeing, whether it was poverty. Substance abuse is also a large challenge as well that was being experienced. And then the lack of access to those community spaces that perhaps we would have relied on or maybe taken for granted as being, oh, well, I'll just wait for the next one. I'll wait for the next opportunity to visit a neighbor, to call, to check in on people. Seeing those as not being the critical necessities that are required in order to maintain well-being in diaspora, but again, as nice to haves as well. When those were not able to be accessed, unfortunately, we saw the increase in a lot of steep declines in terms of well-being of individuals when it came to mental health crises, when it came to interactions with law enforcement. And this is also deeply intertwined with the experience of anti-Black racism and the lens on that during 2020 and that pandemic period, which we can also speak about further as well. But also then recognizing too, with people being in such close quarters, the dependence on substance and external substances such as illicit drugs and alcohol abuse, to be able to mask some of the challenges that come with trying to keep up with this society and the capitalistic just kind of pressures that people are experiencing, and how that also impacts refugee and immigrant communities as well. So that's a lot. That's a lot to carry. It's a lot to even talk about, because even within this is, just the experience of so many individuals and individual families that come to mind during this time. But then comes that aspect of what were some of the things that people were doing? Because I think it's also extremely important to recognize too that these aren't just things that happened to communities, happened to our South Sudanese Canadian community, but as well are things that we're trying to be interacted with as well. One of the strengths and I think shows of resilience as well through that process is the constant, again, aspect of being able to take what you're learning and reflect that back into community as well. And this was very much so led by youth in our community too. And I do believe that when youth are, afforded the opportunity, not necessarily just by it being handed, but being able to be equipped through the support of elders and that intergenerational learning, a lot of transformational work takes place. And this is what took place within Canada with the advent of the South Sudanese Youth of Canada organization, which was created in essence to be able to provide space for youth to be able to name and identify the issues they were seeing and experiencing in community, and also use the knowledge that they were gaining from Pan-African spaces, from working with the Black diaspora, African diaspora, and all the lessons that came from being in community at that level, and be able to challenge it as well as bring it into the spaces within our community that needed it the most as well. So during that space, there was a lot of progress that was made, but then also in terms of the challenges with that came that aspect of trying to bring others along onto a journey that you're still figuring out yourself. And I think the beauty of that is that you recognize that you don't necessarily need to be an expert to be able to take the little that you know and help uplift your brothers and sisters, but that does also weigh on the individual as well. So in terms of the cultural transmission aspect, one of the things that I think is important to recognize too is that only becomes a challenge in terms of pouring out from yourself, even if you don't have all the answers to be able to support your community, when it's not reciprocal, when there's not an opportunity for you to be able to feel that, okay, well, I might not have my career fully sorted yet. I'm still learning, I'm still growing, but I do know that if I'm able to show up for my community with the few resources that I do have, that I'm confident that I will be able to also be poured into in that space as well. Unfortunately, that isn't the case for everyone. But in terms of the cultural transmission aspect, it is that reliance and also encouragement as well that that can be nurtured over time. So when we look at the different levels of what that could look like, starting with the individual aspect as well, when you know your story, you walk with a different type of confidence, regardless of where you were born. I'm fortunate to have had parents who emphasized that as being a key value from a young age, not only from the South Sudanese perspective, but also looking at how our story is completely interlinked to that of other individuals, whether it was watching documentaries about South African liberation struggles as a kid. You don't know Disney movies. We're watching all of these different things and learning and seeing ourselves reflected, to the point of having some of these different, leaders and stories as being household names as well. And then also looking at the connection of not necessarily separating yourself from the anti-Black racism experience, and also the liberation struggle that's happening right here in North America, or Turtle Island, as it's also called by Indigenous Canadians as well, and being able to see yourself within those larger struggles too, and find that sense of kinship. So I think that aspect of things, in terms of being able to take what you learn from other individuals and share that, is central to that well-being as well. And then also looking at the family structure as well. Family structure is oftentimes seen as the first form of government or institution that people interact with, and is also then reflective of how you then experience the rest of the world as well. When rituals and things such as sharing a meal together are not even able to be maintained, because you have parents who, for well-meaning reasons, are trying to survive, perhaps maintaining 2 to 3 jobs, which is oftentimes a norm for many who are living in diaspora as well. Those are things that get missed. It's the sharing of stories, it's the sharing of experiences, and those day-to-day check-in points, which are what oftentimes serve as those preventative factors before you even get to talking about mental health crises as being those biological aspects, or larger situations that you might deal with maybe a more formal care provider. Being able to ensure that those experiences are available as points of connection as well are extremely important to that cultural transmission, as being a way to maintain well-being on an ongoing basis. And then also just even the connection to those family members and individuals beyond the nuclear family as being critical as well. I do recognize that it is a privilege, as many individuals have lost so many family members due to displacement and other unfortunate tragedies that continue to take place even in diaspora as well. But we do recognize as well the benefit that it is to be able to provide that connection opportunity. And I think that's why, again, I recognize it as a privilege to be in this space as well, to intentionally seek out that community and that connection too. So yeah, I'll pause there and then pass it over to Mary to continue on. And thank you so much. And I look forward to continuing this discussion with all of you.
Thank you so much, Vibya. Thank you so much. I felt like I just went back to Kenya, and I'm so happy. I think I already mentioned this the first time we met, because I noticed that you're working with your father, and just doing this work, and not just in the home but outside with the public, with your own father. This is amazing, and this is what we need, because then we are rebuilding systems, we're rebuilding cultures away from home. And then if you're dealing with things like war, then it gets more complex. And I raised my hand because I want to ask you a question in regards to the parents, like your parents, for example. I know, because there's this, families are separated, some are left behind, some some move to another place, some move to a totally different place. I'm trying to understand, how do parents who are in these situations, who are separated from their parents, from their families, how do they cope with this? Do they have some sort of are they doing this in the same way you describe, where you have a community where you're meeting on the weekends, you're doing things, but do they have any other kind of support system that kind of helps them also acclimatize with the new spaces they're in? And also, because I understand that when you're moving from a place to, it's much harder when you're moving as an adult. So, because then you have to completely learn everything again. It's very different from someone who's, born somewhere and they're learning different cultures. So I'm just trying to understand how they deal with this and how they manage, how are they supported?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think that in a lot of cases, and just to also clarify too, and just so that's known too, I'm not a parent myself, but in terms of just being on the receiving end as a child, and I'm observing this and also seeing how it's continuously evolving as well for new parents, that I'm noticing as well in our communities, is that for some individuals, that reliance on community was enough to be able to fill in the gaps, and that they perhaps were not able to, not even that they were not able to necessarily do it, but that's also just how our culture operates as well. If you, Mary, notice my child doing something that they shouldn't be doing, and you're out there, you have every right, and from our cultural perspective, to be able to advise them, to stand in the gap for them, in that parental figure, as a parental figure in that sense, right? And I think that was received and accepted in a lot of cases, but then I think it also becomes complex with, again, that over emphasis on formal labels and what that looks like in a lot of places as well. If you are not legally tied to that individual, that family, your rights also become restricted just by basis of how the society is set up as well. So I think that's also a challenge too, in terms of accessing those supports. And I think that also the time barrier, coming back to that in terms of needing to survive capitalism and navigating what that looks like in terms of never fully, even 30 years later, for a lot of people, never fully feeling established, never fully feeling like, okay, I've reached a point where I've achieved this Canadian or American or whatever dream, where I can finally breathe. Many people have never experienced that since they arrived, and oftentimes people are just so occupied with having to chase that even in terms of being able to identify what are some of those gaps that are needed in terms of additional support, whether for children or for parents themselves. I think that's oftentimes missed, and it does start with being able to recognize that, okay, perhaps I do need that help. I am overburdened and all of that. But for a lot of individuals that I've also spoken with, a lot of parents and elders, because I have had the the privilege of being able to sit with them and just ask them, like, now in reflection, perhaps your children are in their 20s. How are you feeling? How are things going for you? And I have had a lot of elders confide in me about the fact that they felt that they had to hold their breaths this entire time, just to be able to get by. So they felt that if they were to allow themselves to really, like a lot of people call it, maybe like feeling your feelings, or like really recognizing and being in touch with how your nervous system is reacting to the stressors, or just even reflecting on past experiences, like from escaping war, navigating some of the instability back home, and navigating what you've lost as well, in terms of the beauty of being able to experience that upbringing. That can be extremely painful for individuals, not knowing how to process that pain necessarily in healthy ways. And we talked about substance use as being something, or even other distractions as well, work being one of them. Finding things to mask what is coming up emotionally can also be a challenge as well. So oftentimes individuals spend more time looking at those masking and distraction techniques as being ways to just work through and survive, versus being able to actually sit with the reality of, okay, this is what I'm feeling. This is the grief that I feel for what I've left behind, for what I thought the promise of this country was going to be for me, and the realities of what it was going to mean for my family, and actually being able to take in what it is that you're working with. And I think that for those families and even individuals who have been able to go through that process of really sitting in that reality of what we thought that we were going to experience when coming to this place is not the reality of what it is, whether for reasons of financial instability, whether for discrimination and anti-Black racism that is faced within institutions, whether it is also some of the challenges in terms of what we thought was going to be camaraderie between African communities in diaspora as well, because let's not forget as well the impact of some of those things in terms of the individualistic mindset, and how that can even fragment what should be communities of strength as well, beyond the borders of our countries. Those limitations, I think, and the realities of that, once those people are able to also reflect in that, sit in that, and navigate those realities, as well as when then you can actually dream of, okay, what can we do next based on what our current circumstances are, what needs to be done from there. And that's where we've seen the greatest success. And that's where I believe now we're seeing a lot of the wake-up calls happening, where parents are having more innovative and forward-thinking conversations about what do we need to do differently, because what we've been doing hasn't been yielding the results that we thought it was going to.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh my God, I feel like I just went to a lecture, and I'm so happy. And I think I have a lot of questions, but we don't have enough time. But I think I want to ask, if a parent were here, a parent who's in the same situation as any other parent who's moved from any other African country, they're living in the West, and they're trying to connect with their child. They're trying to understand why, they're getting into trouble, why they're not making friends, or they're making the wrong friends. What do you think? What is the main thing you think is missing? What are they not seeing? What do they need to do differently?
I think that being able to own your own experiences and your own challenges as well, and remember what it felt like to be a child, is important. I think that, again, like I was saying, being able to access those memories can be very painful for individuals. And in terms of talking with youth, there's a lot of youth who they know of their parents, they've expressed that, but they don't know their parents. And this is something that is also impacting youth who are on the continent as well. As I've had the opportunity to be able to not only spend time in South Sudan connecting with my immediate family, but also be able to visit Nigeria, to be able to spend some time briefly in South Africa as well, and hearing some of those things, but also observing it in just like the family dynamics as well, is that people might know, of their parents in kind of like milestone moments, but in terms of really understanding, like, okay, so what was it like for you in school in terms of your relationships, and being able to draw from those places as strengths too. I think that a lot of parents and And even just it happens with so many of us as well, as we grow and go through different experiences in life, is that we can relinquish our experiences as being maybe not I'm not as critical, or I shouldn't draw from that as being like a source of knowledge. But I think for a lot of parents, really being able to recognize that as much as your children can learn from different sources, and it can be a beautiful and empowering thing as well. Being able to really share from your experience can really humanize and their own journey as well, and recognize as well that they're not so far off from you or from their expectations as well. So I think that just being able to share those experiences, to say like, I see you, I know what it feels like to not feel accepted. I know what it feels like to be confused, or to have feelings of regret, and all of those things can really be like transformative to opening up those conversations. But also it comes with, I think, recognizing the pride aspect of being able to accept too that you don't know everything, and that you're also learning alongside them, but you're willing to sit in that discomfort of not knowing and not having all the answers, and just be able to be with them in that space, but be committed to growing together. And I think that's it's a very challenging thing, because oftentimes I think a lot of parents still feel that weight of, well, my role is to be the navigator, to know everything, and to be able to move things forward. So it feels very vulnerable to not have the answers. But I think it's in that vulnerability that that understanding grows, and then that openness as well to have tough conversations too. So
yeah. Thank you so much. Oh my God, thank you so much. I hope everyone learned something and enjoyed this part of the segment. I think now we are going to be speaking to Dr. Mazibuko. And now we are moving. I think everything is all related, what we're doing today, because there's going to be cultural transmission also with the next segment. But we're also going to be discussing rest and rituals and radical self-knowledge, as Dr. Mazibuko said. So please, the floor is yours. Introduce yourself, and yeah, karibu sana.
Hi everyone. Sanbonani, Dumelang. Oh my God. Oh my word. This is I'm honored to be here, first of all, before I can say much. I learned so much already. Oh my goodness. It's like sometimes we can be so closed off into our own little worlds and not realize how much of the world is happening also. So thank you for that, Vibya. Thank you so much. It was so enlightening, and it was also very, it hit home on quite a number of things, even on an actual conversation I was having with a loved one yesterday. So thank you so much for sharing. And I can imagine how much you're carrying. It's so may you be given all the strength to carry on and to move forward on your path. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mary, for the space, and thank you for everyone who's joined. And before I can share anything, I would just like to honor the land beneath our feet and the ancestors who came before us, and the dreams that we are carrying forward on their behalf, and to just send love and speak abundance and joy and healing over everyone. My name is Dr. Mmatshepo Gaspa Mazibuko, and I work as a holistic executive coach, and I'm also an author. I've written quite a number of books, but one that stays very close to my heart is a project that I just recently launched, which is a children's storybook that teaches them the solar systems and the planets in their mother tongue. It has been translated into 3 South African languages now, and we'll be going into South African schools very soon. And I'm excited about that, and I feel like it's it's doing something that we've been yearning for a long time, where we've been told, you know, these words don't exist in our mother tongues, and we've had to twist and twirl and, you know, and then shift our tongues to learn, you know, languages that we can't truly express. Even now, to speak this English, I've had to load a few data bundles. So I'm hoping I can finish the conversation before they deplete. So I'm the founder of a firm, a soul-led strategic and leadership development, so business strategy and leadership development firm that is based in Johannesburg. I myself am also based here in Johannesburg. I was born in Mpumalanga, but I moved in my preteens to come live in Gauteng. So my roots are in South Africa. And firstly, the term Ditaola, right? I love giving meaning to that because of what it truly means. It's a Sepedi term, which actually refers to, it's a double-sided coin, where Ditaola means divination bones, but also Ditaola just means ancestral wisdom. So I call it, you know, the wisdom of our ancestors as medicine, you know, and as a way to guide our people back to themselves. And I regard myself as just a vessel that my ancestors just get to carry their work through. And the work I do just sits in the intersection of this African ancestral wisdom and modern leadership, and just nervous system healing, to help leaders and creatives and entrepreneurs and founders and people who are in the professional space to reconnect with themselves and find their purpose and power and peace without having to sacrifice themselves to burnout, or, you know, these current broken systems that are just about go, go, go. And the moment you feel tired, or you need rest, or you're not okay, you're seen as the weakest link, you know? So today I'm actually honored to share on this conversation, because it touches very closely to the work I do, and it's very personal to me that, you know, we find a way for Africans to prioritize healthy practices, even just as the world feels very heavy and uncertain, and how doing so is actually a profound act of leadership and legacy, and even resistance to a system that is actually working against us, you know. When I first saw the invitation to come speak in this space, it felt so aligned. It was shared to me by someone in my inbox, someone I've never met before. We've just been connected on LinkedIn, and they shared it with me. They didn't say anything. They just dropped me the link, and I checked it out, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is so aligned. This is calling out to me. So I made sure that I reach out, and I lend my voice to the platform, and allow, you know, just this piece of information that I have with me to be, you know, a contribution to this massive puzzle that everyone is bringing, you know, their own piece to creating this big, beautiful picture of how beautiful we are, and how deserving we are of a world that feels like we are not in survival mode, but we are thriving, you know? So for me, I want to talk about how reclaiming our right to live fully, even in turbulent times, is possible. And I've kind of broken it down into like three places, because I tend to to ramble. So I just wanted to stay within time. So I've kind of broken my thinking down into three pieces, and those pieces being, you know, the current leadership models and why they're failing us, as well as the healing alternatives that are there to assist, you know, people in the workspace to feel like they're thriving and they're flourishing, and to also share just practical embodiment tools that can be carried into daily life that actually can be helpful on the journey. And tapping into these painful leadership models that are draining our people is that, you know, I'm growing up in post-apartheid South Africa, and I'm noticing that many of us have inherited, and we celebrate the system of just performance and not presence. It doesn't matter how you're feeling, what you're going through. What we need are the KPIs, are the results. We have a target, and if that's not met, then why are you here? You know? So these workplaces are now enforcing just survival and not sustainability. You know, it's not about you. You don't matter. You're just a product producing machine for those results. So therefore, with this conditioning to be in this constant doing and constant giving, it costs us our bodies, it costs us our health, and it's called being professional. And I feel like professionalism has become the new illness, in fact, that needs to be cured. Because now, if you think about it, I can even like just share 2 or 3 real world examples of how professionalism has become an illness, where in my line of work, sometimes someone will come in and say, I want to transition in my career, I feel stuck. But when we fully divine, we find that there's things like witchcraft in the workplace, simply because people are functioning from a place of scarcity and fear. There's one position, so we must all fight for it. So there'll be sabotage, there'll be competition, there'll be backbiting, and, you know, crabs in the barrel mentality. And it's all at the cost of community. It's all at the cost of, it means you're by yourself at work, you're alone. There's no community. And that in itself can take a toll on your mindset. It can take a toll on you as a person, just outside of the role that you're filling, you know. And another one is emotional starvation, where leaders are not able to hold emotional space. They punish vulnerability instead of nurturing it, and therefore people have just turned into zombies that are just forcing themselves to wake up and get to work and come back, but there's no fulfillment, there's no sense of purpose. It's just, you know, putting bread on the table, and that's that. And what it does is it also impacts the home. You know, the rates of divorces come from the fact that we come back home, we're both tired, we have kids, we have bills to pay. Now it's not a home, now it's a business. Or we don't even talk about the relationship or the family. We're talking about what we must do by the end of the month. And the children also get neglected. I am finding a lot of moms who feel guilty because, yes, they want the success, but at the cost of coming home with another load of work. You move from screen to screen, and you're not being able to be there and be present for those milestones. And I've seen a lot of nanny hopping, because they meet a nanny, spend 3 weeks, that nanny has to be let go, and a new one, simply because I don't think the nanny is the only problem. But the problem is also that your nervous system is out of work. So therefore, it will create trust issues. The moment you hear your baby cry, babies should cry, but the moment your baby cries, the nanny is not doing their job. So therefore, it affects community at a broader space, not just in the workplace, but you as a person in your community, you as a person in your family. It takes you, it just puts you out of work. You're snappy, you're always anxious. You know, I'm encountering all of that. And one of the worst ones in this workplace also is the pretend productivity that goes on in in like companies where employees just work longer hours, but they're not feeling creative, they're not feeling innovative, and they're not feeling truly connected to what they're doing. They're just trying to meet the quota. And sometimes it's also never enough, you know? So how I feel this, and like, this is just how I try to kind of bring it home a little bit, is that as African people, we have, you know, if you go back into our homes, that's the number one place where leadership is taught. But now we've been copying leadership models that are sort of designed to extract from us, not to uplift us, you know, and which then limits who we are, our talents, and what we actually bring to these spaces, which then delays our development and wounds our communities further and further. And this is because our leaders themselves aren't healthy. They've inherited a lot of pain from their homes, from their childhood, and some of it is genetic. You know, speaking of post apartheid South Africa, there's a lot that we inherited from that anxiety of apartheid that has us in this chokehold of performance over presence. And we find that as our leaders are broken, they further create broken systems. And whereas if we had leaders who are, and which puts up a bit of a privilege in the work that I do, where I get to encounter these people and we get to go through, you know, a journey of healing and restoration of self, and they get to go back and create economies of belonging and community and innovation and just long-lasting legacy, and not just now, you know, what's needed now, but thinking about tomorrow, and not treating people like they are like they can rot, you know, they can be replaced, because that uncertainty of knowing that you're replaceable is also what's putting a strain on people's, you know, mental health, and just, you know, the moment your mental health is out of work, your nervous system follows. Next thing, your cortisol levels shoot up, and now you have illness in the body. And, you know, it starts small. It starts with unnecessary deadlines, you know, choosing the client over the people who have to do the work, and all of those things that happen in the workplace that our parents actually, or us as parents, don't actually come home and actually share and talk about, because you also don't want to bring your problems home. And you seen as the provider and the one taking care of the home, if you start speaking about what's going on at work, it sounds like you're complaining, you know, so you'd rather keep it in and bottle it up, and then that's where the problem, you know, starts. So this subject always stays with me, even when I was in the workforce, before I decided to pull away and be, you know, that person who the people in the workforce can come to and say, hey, I'm not okay. I'm seeing things I cannot explain. Am I overreacting? You know, in instances where there's either a colleague or a manager who's bullying, but like it's subtle. It's not so obvious, and you may think maybe you're seeing things, and you find that you're the new person in the company, and you have no one to talk to, because everyone has created this fraternity of like hyping up the bully. And oh, it's worse than being trapped in the forest, to be honest, because at least there you can find berries and make friends with the, with the birds and the monkeys in the forest. There you are truly on your own, and it's so heavy to witness and to see people just walking around with their faces down simply because they have families to look after, but deep down inside, they're not there, you know? So yeah, I'm happy for you to ask the question, and as we can just have a conversation as we go along.
I want to ask something. You mentioned something about how there are, the divorce rates. People are separating or divorcing because of the challenges they're facing at work, because you bring it home, yeah? But I want to know how capitalism and all the systems we're in are affecting us going into relationships. So is it making it more challenging for us to go into relationships? Is it making us, think, what, maybe I'm not going to have a child, or maybe I'm going to only have one child instead of having maybe 3 children like I planned? How is it affecting us going into relationships and forming these traditional family structures that we know used to
Oh
know?
my goodness. I wish I can go into every house and snatch everyone's phone and break down the TV, because now everyone wants the relationship they see on their TikTok or they see on their movie screen, and they think that's real, not forgetting that there are scripts behind these things. You want the chemistry that was orchestrated instead of a family structure that is actually built on values and principles and support and genuine love. And also I often say, for women, for us to actually, and I know some people may be mad at me for saying this, but women should never ever be expected to be in love. Men can be. Women, our hormone structure does not allow to remain in love every day. One day I wake up and I look at my husband, I'm like, who is this man in my bed? And tomorrow I wake up and he's not answering my phone and I'm losing my mind. Like, why is he not answering? I miss him, So it's the current system. Oh, like love has been capitalized so much that people will be tested in relationships. The partner will lose a job and then they lose their wife. I've encountered such situations where someone will come crying and saying, things in my career are not going well, but the worst part is the wife is also leaving me. She says she cannot stay with someone who can't provide. So and it's mostly leaning towards the women leaving their husbands because of the current financial situation in the house. And whereas it's actually it's a challenge to see how as a partnership there can be innovation. And believe me, once two people marry, and through African customary marriage where you unite the ancestors, there's no such thing as poverty. We choose the poverty unless we are in situations where there's war, there's disposition and such. That's a whole other conversation, because already the environment does not nurture abundance. But in spaces where the only thing you've lost is a job and both partners are still there, the poverty is a choice. Because that union of your ancestors means you have backup. You can go there and say, hey, y'all never used to work. What did you do then to survive? And the guidance will come. But, people quickly see the paycheck missing and they feel like, ooh, now I'm not going to get my MS bag and how are the ladies at the netball meetings for my daughter going to think of me now that, we had to get rid of the car and you find that it is only a test period for the couple to see if are you truly together for the material positions, or are you together because your values match, because what you both bring to the table aligns. And sometimes, honestly, you find that certain relationships were not even meant to reach marriage in the first place, but we force things, and then the ancestors are like, why is this woman still here, my son? And they kick her out. They just take your job temporarily and they show her the door. So it's, capitalism plays a huge role in certain relationships where, I do see, hello, mama, I'm still on a call. I'm going to call you just now. Take that phone, ask for her to open it for you. Sorry about that. Go ask Fofo to open it. Sorry about that. That was my daughter. Which brings us into those healing alternatives when people encounter such challenges, right? Whether it's the trauma of losing your job and then losing your wife, or just being in a workplace that makes you sick to your bones, or being in an environment where you're a leader and you are actually very intimidated by the people you should lead. Because some people would go out and say, you know what, I want my colleagues to fear me. And they would say, my healer, please give me something for my colleagues to fear. I want to walk in there and everyone just bows their head. Even when I'm wrong, they don't call me out. So yeah, I'm telling you, it's such an interesting world that we live in. So one of them is I am a big advocate of nervous system regulation and the vagus nerve, where it's very important to have leaders who actually regulate their own emotions, whether it's the stress you bring from home into the workplace, or it's the stress you take from the workplace and you take home with you. You need to be able to regulate that before you reach the important places. If you're taking the stress from home, stay in the car for a few minutes, stay in the parking lot for a few minutes, go to the bathroom if you're taking public transport, go do some breathing exercises and hum. That's why the stall is private and you can lock it, you know. No one will wonder why you are humming in there. Everyone is minding their own business. Yes, they will be curious, but no one will wonder. So it's an opportunity to take a moment to yourself. And I am a big advocate of that humming. To just sit with yourself and go, that vibration inside your body disperses, atoms and forms new structures inside the body. And because that humming tone it's monotone, it does not have any what do you call it? It's just a clear monotone. It's like putting salt on a speaker and it just buzzes like that. It'll start to create shapes around it, and depending on the type of sound you play on that salt, it'll create different types of shapes. Some will be sharp, and that will signal that the sound is dangerous for your own, remembering that we ourselves are made up of so much water, and water is susceptible to sound. We can use that to our advantage, which is one of the reasons why, in healing modalities, especially African healing modalities and certain Asian practices, the drum and sound healing is so important to help, move the atoms in the body, the cells in the body, to create new patterns, more positive, vibrant patterns. So doing that for yourself and taking a few seconds to just go, regulates you instantly. And it sounds silly, but it's so powerful to do for just those 2 minutes, and then walk into that building, you'll be a whole other person, versus to come in with the road rage, the anxiety, the stress, and you being mad at your children in the morning because one couldn't find their shoe. Already you are too stressed. You are going to get to work and someone has missed the deadline by 5 minutes, and they remind you of that child who couldn't find their shoe in that 5 minutes, and you start shouting at people. And that is not how we work in spaces where we are here to build, So when leaders are able to regulate their emotions, they spark calm in their environments, because we as people like to pretend as if our presence does not affect the people around us, when it actually does. It like we can all feel the collective anxiety, we can all feel the emotional turbulences of others, and we can sometimes even misinterpret it for our own. And that is unfair to project whatever you're feeling to someone else. It is my, individual responsibility to ensure that I'm a safe space first before I can say I want a safe space to work in or to live in. So regulating yourself for your family's sake, for your colleagues' sake, is such a powerful thing to do. And it's such a small 2-minute thing that you can do and you become a different person. And there's, in African philosophy, we believe that leadership is rooted in unity, because I am because you are, and not dictatorship and dominion and shouting and bullying, but it's in just reviving communal decision making and care and collective purpose, and not just individual driven goals. So also in that moment when you are regulating yourself, you actually choose to set the intention that I want to be in union with the people I'm going to work with. I am neither above nor below them, but I want to be in union. The moment you do that, because you've already regulated yourself to be neutral, when you walk into that space, the moment their energy affects you, it affects you in a way that you will feel them, you will have empathy, you are not overwritten or already busy with patterns of anxiety and stress and all of that. And the moment you do the same in returning home, the same thing is going to happen. And one of the other healing alternatives that I apply in my practice is called human design. It's a tool that was created by a man who went by the alias Ra Uru Hu, and it was created sometime in the 1990s, I think around 1992, and it is a tool where we are able to map out your unique energetic imprint as to whatever was happening. It's like, I say human design is like if the practice of energy healing and astrology had a baby, that would be human design, where it takes your energy and how the day you were born, all of the planets and astrological bodies were moving during your birth, and how that affects you and it affects your organs. So we are able to tell through human design which of your organs need extra care, which ones are you doing too much with them, what foods to tone down on, and also what your leadership style is, and for you to actually apply that and be more efficient. So human design has 5 energy archetypes. I'll just share those for context. So we have people that we call generators, we have people that we call manifestors, we have people that we call manifesting generators, we have projectors and reflectors. And each of these energy archetypes have a unique leadership style. For example, generators lead from actually being involved in the work and doing the work. So if you take a generator and you lock them up in an office by themselves, they're going to get sick, because they need to be in the environment and be involved in the work and actually lead by example and say, this is how you assemble it. This is how you type it. This is how they lead from showing how. However, when you take a projector on the other hand, and you put them in the space and you expect them to show that this is how, then they're going to get sick, because that's not their strength. Their strength is strategy. They lead from projecting into the future, seeing what trends should be avoided, what trends should be followed, what's long-term, what's short-term, and so on. And they then thrive in being locked up by themselves to think and to wonder, because they can easily get distracted by other people's energy. Whereas if you find reflectors, they lead by mirroring the environment. If the reflector is toxic, it means the environment is toxic. And if they are in an inspired mood, it means the environment is inspiring. So each energy archetype allows us to discern what your strengths are, and for us to accept you as you are, and to allow you the space to thrive as you are, And once we do that, then that's when those KPIs that we are so after will be met, but with ease, and not with, forcing people into structures that it's like trying to force a triangle into a circle, and ending up taking it and cutting the corners to make it a circle. And I feel like that's what the current work system is doing to people. It's trying to make circles out of triangles, and it's very impossible. You will end up with a circle this tiny. It'll be so small, it will not even fit in that space that you're trying, and then you'll say it's not enough, and then people get fired, people get demoted, people get let go, and simply because it was not questioned why they're not thriving, why they're not showing up as their best selves. It's because you've asked them to leave their selves out at the door and come in as what suits whatever the organization has in place. So therefore, it's very imperative that we kind of reimagine, leadership through the lens of our uniqueness, our ancestral truth, and also using these modern healing tools to ensure that we fall away from burnout and overexerting ourselves in these spaces. And therefore, just I've named only one of these techniques where it's important to do the humming and regulating yourself. There's suddenly birds. I hope it's not distracting on the other side.
I can hear them, but it's fine. I think we also need to wind up, so that because we've taken 7 minutes from.
Oh yes, my apologies.
No, feel free. Yeah, just wind up, and then let's move on.
I'm just closing off to say that there's other techniques like counting down from 100 to 0, to just count down if you feel like you are in a very panicky state. What I normally say is that when you do this counting down exercise, is that our brains are very silly. They are tools for solving problems, and they never want to be wrong. And therefore, if you count down from 100 to 0, it's not something we usually do. So your brain will want to focus only on those numbers, and it will forget everything else for that moment. Therefore, focusing only on the numbers and slowing down that brain pulse to get you into a more relaxed place, and therefore have you respond from, a more calmer state than the anxiety and the panic that, is often exacerbated by these spaces that we're in, whether it's in our homes or in the workplace or just the in-between. So those rituals, those simple, small rituals, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So we are spirit plus ritual. We need those daily practices, those things we do daily as a ritual. We think rituals are just, lighting candles in the middle of the night and beating the drum, but it's just habitual things that we do on a daily basis to get ourselves centered, to get ourselves grounded. And sometimes it doesn't have to be hectic. It can just be something as simple as, breathing and humming and counting down in reverse.
Thank you so much. I think I would have wanted to hear more about the different kinds of, do you call them archetypes? Or
yes, archetypes, yes.
But I don't think we are. I think we need a special session, because I also have a lot of questions. As you were talking, I was thinking about, how can we apply what you're teaching us to recruitment, for example? When we're bringing in different kinds of people, because they are new people. We always say it's not about culture fit, yeah? We are trying to be more inclusive. But then when we talk about all these energies and how we're supposed to be working together and how we're carrying everything from one place to another, I'm thinking there are so many different spaces. That's why I even talked about relationships. So many other spaces where we can have, we can talk about how to apply these lessons. And I think we need to arrange another session where we can actually, where I can ask as many questions as I would want to ask.
That would be lovely.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Mazibuko. Thank you so much. And yeah, say hello to the birds. I could hear them a bit. I can't tell what kind of bird they are, but yeah.
I think it's probably pigeons or doves. There's a neighbor who has doves and pigeons in their home.
Nice. And then I'd want to ask you what all those birds mean, what they do during the season, and all that. You know I have questions. But yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Mazibuko. And I'm really happy to see the connection between the first segment and now. It's not about being an individual. It's about community. It's about picking practices and connecting to the ancestors. So this is what I'm hearing from both of you, from you and Vibya. So I love that there's a connection and there are similarities. So now I want us to move on to Waithera Karanja. And Waithera is going to speak about, it's also going to touch on the same things. She's basically going to be talking about holistic well-being, so the spirituality and all that, and how to connect to ancestral or traditional ways. So Waithera, the floor is yours, and you can have the 10 minutes of yours that we took, or you can have the 10 minutes that we're going to leave for later. So I want you to just feel free and teach us. Karibu sana.
Okay, thank you so much, Mary. This is such a pleasure. I have truly enjoyed this session from Vibya's contribution. Thank you so much for utilizing your platform to talk about what's happening currently and even in the past in terms of your ancestral home and just how you cope. And also thank you so much, Dr. Mazibuko. I truly honor and appreciate your work in terms of creating African literature to teach the coming generations in terms of, things that we're told we don't have access to, and even our languages don't have the capacity to tell those stories, which I find to be quite ironic because currently reading a book by Vusamazulu Credo Mutwa, and he talks a lot about our origin as melanated beings from the Sirius B star system, from the Sirius A star systems. So I do believe that in one capacity or another, our languages do have the capacity to tell those kind of stories. It's just in the evolution of time and, of course, with colonial influence that we do not have the capacity to be able to trace back how the languages have evolved. So thank you so much for this platform, Mary. It's such an honor, and I'm truly so privileged to learn from very eloquent, well-spoken, well-informed women, and I'm very grateful. So I think I'll just start by introducing myself in the ways that brings honor to my people. So Jetago Waithera Wajiko, Waweru Karanja, nie dewa muhirigaya mojiro, Barea Dura, Rikaya Mwagi, Namusheni Kamushege, Githogori Kiabu County. So basically what I've said is I have acknowledged my name and I've also acknowledged my ancestors. I've stated my clan, I've stated my house, and I've stated the age group that I belong in, and I've also stated my ancestral land, which is Kamushege Githongori. So for us, in terms of what I have been taught is that for you to acknowledge yourself, you must acknowledge the ones that were so that you could be. And I think Vibya mentioned something of, the better you know your story, you just walk with a certain form of confidence, right? So yes, I know my identity within this world, but I also know my identity in my lineage, and I know who I come from, who I embody, the gifts that I have, the weaknesses that I have, and that informs how I take up space today. So yeah, a little bit about me. I am a holistic wellness practitioner, and this is more on the formal side. So the holistic wellness practitioner, I am presently working specifically with children to, just introduce holistic wellness practices. And I'm focusing this on children from, low income backgrounds and communities. And because I am using holistic wellness, and that means there is a holistic approach to it. And as much as I'm working with the children, I also, where possible and where there is consent, I work with the families, the parents, just to deal with all the issues that come with the struggle of poverty. There's usually a lot of alcoholism, drug use, and nobody has an effect on the state of a child's well-being more than the parents. Parents don't realize. I know they carry a lot of burdens, but they also end up, projecting a lot on their children, and that really shapes who they become and how they deal with the world and how they take up space. So that's a little bit about what I do. And on the more informal side, I am a practicing Afro-Indigenous spiritualist. I have been in training for the last 5 years. So a big part of my practice is rooted in my Kikuyu cultural heritage and identity. So I do work with a lot of elders in that capacity, but I do say that wherever I am on the African continent, I am at home. And also my ancestry and my lineage is not restricted to the confines of tribe or language or anything of the sort. So I do interact a lot with elders in the Ifa tradition, in the Dagara community, in all sorts of tribes within Kenya, South Africa, all throughout Eastern Africa, and some parts of Western Africa, the Yoruba land, the Fon, the Hosa people, even the Igbo. So yes, that's a little bit about me. I am the founder of the Charms, Roots and Relics Apothecary, and I also do manage the online community that is currently at 150 plus people, mostly based in Eastern Africa because that is where it started. But we do have members in Nigeria, we have members in South Africa, we have members in Botswana. So it's basically a space where, you know, it's a digital community where we talk a lot about Afro-Indigenous spiritual practices. I'm just in the process of demystifying that, especially amongst the youth. You know, our rituals are not witchcraft, contrary to what anybody might say. And our names and our beliefs and the way we used to live were not primitive. In fact, I was talking to a friend today about how much the world is regressing. I'm seeing some architect was given the innovative award of the year because he has discovered mud houses. And I'm like, it's innovative when they do it, but it's primitive when Africans do it. But, you know, so in terms of that, I think the power of personal mythology and collective mythology is very important. That is why I had to start by telling my story, to show that I know who I am and where I'm from, because our story as Africans has been told for us for such a long time, that we were very backward people. And, you know, the colonizers introduced this savior complex. They brought modernity, they brought civilization, they brought all of these things, they brought Christianity and took us away, and they saved us basically from our very God-forsaken ways, which is simply not true. So a big part of my work focuses on specifically working with the youth to just help them reconnect with and re-identify their roots. Having pride in your name. What is the meaning of your name? I am also a bone reader, and I'm a diviner, so I do that through bone divination and cowrie shell divination. So in that capacity, it helps to provide a lot of clarity and insight in day-to-day things. What I have been taught to understand is that as a melanated being, it is not your destiny to walk this earth uninformed. We like to know the spiritual aspect of everything, and it is because it is at the forefront. What we see here is almost like 2 steps back after the spiritual aspect of it has already happened. That's why for things to manifest, and I also think that's why the missionaries had to come before the colonizers, because they had to bring in the spiritual warfare to break us down, so that by the time they're coming to steal our land and tell us that our riches are in heaven, but their riches are on our land, we have already been spiritually broken down. So aside from that, the Charms, Roots and Relics community, we do have a book club where we read specifically books by African authors that center around Afro-Indigenous spirituality, herbal medicine, decolonization, and real African history as told by Africans, not as told by the oppressors. So we're very keen on that, and it is a space that is exclusive for Africans, which has been met by, okay, not necessarily Africans, but Afro-Indigenous people, melanated beings. It's been met by a lot of contrast, the word racist has been thrown somewhere, but I tell people that because we create spaces that are exclusively for us to protect our own, cultures and beliefs and even conversations and knowledge and wisdom that were once taken away from us, it's not necessarily racist, it's just us being protective. And we are trying to rebuild something that almost feels from the ground up, but I think we're not working from a state of newness, we are working from legacy. I think the knowledge is innate, the wisdom is innate, it's in us, we just have to find proper stepping stones to get us to remembering that. So in that capacity, I am in the process, and this has been in the works for quite a while now, but I'm in the process of creating a directory of Afro-Indigenous spiritual practitioners, particularly elders, so that because the community has so many tribes, so many people from all walks of life. So somebody will tell me, hi, I want access to a Kikuyu elder, I want access to an Akamba elder, I want access to a Xhosa or a Zulu elder, I want access to a Dagara elder. I'm like, here's a directory, everything is there, the country codes are there, you know what they do, what services they offer. And yeah, so that's a little bit about what I do. And I do think it's very aligned just with the conversations that we're having today. And for me, being who I am and also just being, I will say, my age, I do center this in terms of, just how a lot of the youth are coping with everything that is happening at the moment. Because I think we used to live in this bubble where we're like, politics, we don't know much about politics. We don't know much about the economy. We want to just, grow up. All of those things are not necessarily relevant. But I think I can speak for the Kenyan youth. We had a very rude awakening last year. And I think for those of us that actively participated in the protests, protesting the finance bill, protesting corruption, protesting lack of accountability, protesting just the oppression that we were going through from the current regime, we carry a lot of traumas. Most of us saw very gruesome things that we never even thought we would see in our lives. We saw very horrible things. Some of us lost people that we care about, and it was a rude shock and awakening for us. And we came to realize that this actually is our business. It affects us directly. And the phrase came up, Kenya ni home, and home must be respected, meaning Kenya is our home. There is nowhere else for us to go, literally. There is nowhere else for us to go. And what is the point of abandoning ship when we see that things are stinking and we're like, the previous generations, we've seen how they've handled it. And to be very sincere, there's a big part of it that was very fear-based, but there's a lot of bravery. And I think for me, and also for the diviners and the spiritualists that I work with, we have weekly divination sessions where we read for our respective countries. We read the bones, we read the Oponifa, we read the cowrie shells for our specific country. And we say, what are the key themes happening this week or this month, and what can be expected? And a big part of what was showing up in a lot of West African, East African, and even South African countries was a certain spirit of unrest within the ancestral realm itself. There is a certain, the youth are going to feel an unexplainable sense of rage. You don't understand why you're as angry as you are, but you just feel it. And for us, we believe that rage, if channeled the right way, is very sacred. It can bring change. I am daughter of Oya Orisha, Mamayan's son, and she's a tempest spirit. And she says that there is no rebirth without absolute destruction. There must be chaos before there is peace. So that sort of unraveling that you feel within yourself is what is mirrored outwardly, and is what we saw. We started by being so angry on a personal level by the things we're seeing. And next thing you know, nobody needs to tell you to go out and hit the streets. When you find yourself in the morning, 6 a.m., you've woken up, you have your face mask, you have your people who had gas masks, and you're hitting the streets. Why? Because you realize that you simply have to show up because you have nowhere else to take this anger. You have nowhere else to take this rage. So I believe that we are in a time where things are shifting. And because of that, there's a lot of heaviness that we can find ourselves carrying. And if you're not intentional on setting down that load every once in a while, it's going to be extremely overbearing. We say that emotions and power, if you're somebody who nurtures their spirituality, you will come to understand that your heart and your spiritual power have to grow together. Otherwise, there will be chaos. So if you nurture your spiritual craft, you're nurturing your connection with your ancestors, and you're not controlling that rage within you, there is going to be a certain sort of imbalance, okay? So being intentional on sometimes also existing outside of the chaos. I know the state that the country is in at the moment, but I'm allowed to just come home and be a girl and be happy and enjoy family. And that's why I tell people, engage a lot in collective joy. Collective joy is collective resistance. If you have been oppressed as a collective for generations, you must be keen on nurturing peace and love and community and joy just as incessantly as it was, not just for 2 days, then you forget about it and you go back to being depressed. And I always speak how much on the fact that isolation is a Western construct, because a lot of people dive into depression because they're carrying all of these things by themselves. Let me tell you that. But that's not how it's supposed to be. And even if you don't have somebody to speak to that is right next to you, or even through the phone, let me tell you something. If you know your name and you know your traditional name, all of those people who you carry that name from carry that burden with you. And sometimes it's just okay to let them take the load off for the day. So in terms of how I think that we can create spiritual anchors, the first thing I always encourage people my age and the general youth that I work with, first things first is, I know people talk about this a lot, but ancestral veneration is a big part of your African identity. If you don't honor the people who came before you, the people whose sacrifices and choices and mistakes and successes literally shaped the person that you are today through melanin, through epigenetics, we say that melanin is, in a scientific sense, melanin is a doorway through which the life force of African spirituality flows from generation to generation, okay? And that is a big part of how we were disconnected from it. They taught us to hate our melanin, that because we are Black, we're less than everybody else, that because we are Black, we deserve to be in service to everybody else, that because we are Black, we are primitive, we are inferior, we are compared to baboons. But let me tell you something, the moment you tap into the pride that comes with simply the biggest component of who you are, because yes, we're made of so much water and all these muscles and everything, but your melanin is the biggest part of you. It's in every single part, your eyes, even your hair, right? We say we have what we call 9 ether hair. So ancestral veneration is very big on that. I will say it's finding small and practical ways to include ancestral veneration in your life to suit your lifestyle, okay? Back in the day, things were done in a particular way because that was the lifestyle then. Today, there's so much to consider. There's so much to consider. We are more disconnected from community than before because we don't live in clustered villages anymore. Everybody has their house. One person has 3 rooms or something. So you find a way to create a practice that aligns with who you are, with your identity. I always say also with your tribe, it's good to honor. But the first place to start, I would suggest, is that of pouring libations. Now, as we are people, we always say we came from the soil and we will return to the soil. It's important then that you connect with the Divine Mother which is, Mother Earth. It's very important that you connect with her every single day. The West has taught us to view the earth as a commodity, as something that we take resources from, but our ancestors saw the earth as a living, breathing entity. So they related with her the same way they would relate with their neighbors, right? In peace, in generosity, in giving. You never take more than you give. It has to make sense. It has to balance. So waking up fasting in the morning, taking a glass of water, it does not matter what tribe and ethnic group you are from. Every single African culture across the continent and in the diaspora includes pouring of libation in one form or another. The nitty-gritties might be different. In Kikuyu, we pour water or muratina, the traditional brew, 3 times. And in between each 3 times, we have a phrase where we say, Thai, the Yaga, we to Thai, that whatever you're pouring is what is going into the earth, right? The Yoruba will have the thing of putting the alcohol in their mouth and then spitting it on the ground that they have taken from themselves and they have decided to give back to the earth before they consume whatever it is they're consuming themselves. So however you want to do it, feel free to consider some sort of way that you want to incorporate, consult your elders if you're interested in it, consult your parents if they're aware of that. But I always say it starts you off with so much alignment, because for me, every time I pour, I like to say I pour this in gratitude. I pour this for protection. I give thanks and I acknowledge the people that walk with me every day and that inform my choices. And even the wounds that I heal them not for myself, but for the ones that came before me and the people that will come after me. So doing that connects your ancestral lineage and the land. And remember, your ancestors' bodies lay in the land. Okay, so by pouring direct libation to the land, that is one way of you connecting with them. However, in the African communities, we don't believe that that ancestors are the dead. We just view them as spirits that exist in a different timeline, but that still have a very direct influence in the way that we live our lives today. So finding a way to connect with them, I will always say libation is a good place to start. Setting up a very simple altar is a good place to start. Honoring your name. If you don't know the name of the people in your lineage, it's as simple as I say, I, Waithera Wajiko, I call on all the Waitheras and the Wanjikos before me. Stand with me. I need your strength as I face what I'm facing today, or I need you to share your joy with me or partake in this joy with me. Whenever I have the community gatherings where we have our drumming circles to just honestly let loose. And, Dr. Mazibuko said how, sounds can even change the frequencies in your body. And when I dance, even during that time, I like to say, I'm doing this for me, but also for the ones who didn't have the chance to participate in this sort of communal joy, right? So having an altar is a good way. Daily ritual and prayer. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. And please remember that acknowledging your African ancestry and your lineage and the people that came before you does not make you an atheist, okay? The concept of God is not exclusive to Christianity. And, we had that before the people who brought all those other religions came. Yes, Mary, I see your hand is up. Is my time up?
No. Ma'am, your time is not up, but I want to ask something before I forget. Because you mentioned something about you're trying to emphasize that it's okay to be connected with your ancestors. It's not primitive. And I want you to mention, so I want you to connect this to religion, because we know religion wasn't in our Kikuyu. I'm from the Kikuyu, as you already know, I'm from the same community, but we didn't have religion before. Then there's also people who say, yeah, we also didn't have God before. This is why the community and the Maasai community, we have a almost similar name for God. So I want you to connect this to religion and tell us how to deal with this fear that on one hand, we are told that we should, revere the ancestors from somewhere we have never been, somewhere on a different continent. And that is something very natural, In the Catholic Church where I was raised, there's, eating the body of Christ. That's a sacrament. There's, you know, drinking the blood of Christ. That's the wine. So I want you to compare these two and kind of try to help us move past this point where you're thinking, okay, am I doing the right thing by honoring my ancestors, or even thinking about them, talking about them? You know, you mentioned the word altar, and you know, immediately I know some people who are very spiritual who also say we don't need an altar because we might invite the wrong spirits in. So I get it, spirituality, everyone does not think the same. But I want you to help us move from this point where we think that, you know, we're struggling. Why is it okay for us to revere and to call on to ancestors who are, you know, from Abrahamic religions? You know, we go read their what are they called? They used to prophesy, their prophecies. We go read their stories. But then it seems a bit of a challenge to do that with our own ancestors. So help us, tell me, I know you know what I'm feeling, but help us understand how to deal with this. What's happening?
Okay. So first of all, it's important to, I think, to note that the position of starting from somewhere that is fear-based, to me, I consider it to be very healthy, because that's what lets you know that you are stepping out of a system that has told you everything. And that's why I usually tell people, you start from 3 years old, you've been thrown into the school system, you're told that your life must map out like this, you must study this system, you work until you're 60, you retire, and this is the religion that you follow, and this is what that makes you, and because of that, this is the space that you take in society. So if you're starting from a position of fear and feeling that discomfort, I personally think that it's something that should not be marked as negative, because for us is what we call the threshold. The threshold is a position of complete discomfort, and it comes with a lot of cognitive dissonance as well, because you're fighting a lot of internalized colonialism, that for you it feels natural to speak on and to call on the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but you cannot say, I'm calling on Yeduka Jurore, I'm calling on Kamau Kefuri. I have called on my ancestors by name, and I do that with pride every single day because they hear me, because they walk with me. But it took me a moment to get there. Even when I started working with the elders, I started seeing the Babalaos, I started seeing the Modomugos, I was like, these people can just do juju on me. These people can just sell my soul. But if you think about it in a certain capacity, when you get baptized, you give a certain entity dominion over your soul. Do you understand? And I usually struggle with that, because why does the church allow the baptism of children? People who cannot consent. You're baptized as a toddler. You don't know that you're getting baptized. You don't even know what rituals are being done on you. And also the whole, for me, pouring libations is one thing, but the whole drinking of the blood and eating of the body, I mean, if you're afraid of witchcraft and you don't see how that in itself is participating in something that has very occultic notations behind it, is very crazy. Because even in the African community, we don't drink anybody's blood, and even in a symbolic way, we don't eat anybody's body. We just share what we have and give it back to nature. So first of all, I think I will start by saying that somebody, Malidoma Patrice, the late Malidoma Patrice Some, he wrote in his book of Water and Spirits, the initiation of the life of an African shaman. He wrote that wherever the African goes, his spirituality goes with him. If you're farming, your spirituality has gone with you. If you're doing whatever it is you're doing, your spirituality goes with you. Because for us, nature is our sanctuary. Okay, nature is our sanctuary. It's not that when you are in church is when you are in the house of the one true, and for us, nature is our sanctuary, because if you look at every African tradition and cultural practice and spiritual belief system, Mother Earth is at the core of it. Even for us as Kikuyus, Gai dwells, we call him Mwenenyaga, he dwells in Mount Kirinyaga. Okay, he dwells in the mountain. That is where we pray, facing Mount Kenya, right? So it has a very big difference, because now they have made us feel so uncomfortable in terms of connecting in that capacity. And that's why to have those like witchcraft connotations. Having and I want to also point something out. There's a very big difference in the way we approach God in the spiritual sense and the way we approach God and our ancestral spirits and even the nature spirits in the African sense. In the Christian community, you go to God as a beggar, that I cannot do this without you. I need you to step in. That I saw some hymns people were singing in church at how God takes my useless name and anoints it. That useless name you're speaking about is your traditional African name that they have taught you to believe is useless, but it is not. So first of all, understanding that from where you come from, there is nothing little about you that puts you in a position of begging. That is why we say that for us, we have nyama. The Bakongo will call it nyama. The Yoruba will call it ashe. That it is the force of command, that things happen as you will it. Yes, with the favor of the God that you believe in, the ancestors that come before you. There are things that are out of your control. But in your capacity, you don't beg for abundance. You create abundance within yourself. Abundance is everywhere. The only thing that is created actually is scarcity, right? We had everything accessible to us until the Western world came in and told us that now you have to buy water, you see, and not everybody can afford water. Now you have to buy food and not everybody can afford food. The concept of scarcity is what is man-made, but abundance is everywhere. So I would encourage you to start looking at the polarity of everything. You fear setting up an ancestral altar because you believe that you will invite spirits that are not good into your home. But how much of spiritual hygiene are you lacking as a person? Because if you believe that, then I personally believe that you also have no personal boundaries as a person. You let people cross your boundaries and walk all over you all the time. Because personally, I say that when I light my candles on my altar, I call in the benevolent ancestors of my lineage, those that have a direct purpose to do with my destiny, those whose guidance I need. I don't need anybody who's malevolent. I don't need any spirits that are jealous and any of those things, because again, you command, and majority of the time, whatever it is you fear is exactly what it is you're bringing in. So yes, if you have that perspective of, oh my gosh, I can't set up an altar because I will bring in spirits that, are evil, don't do it, because you have already shown a sign of weakness. That is fear. Your majority of the time, you will even end up conjuring these demons yourself. The way I tell people that there is no such things majority of the time you set up an altar and things start going wrong in your house. I'm like, it's all fear-based, to be very sincere. And we have no such histories. I've never heard, even from the elders that I speak to, that somebody sets up an altar and there's so much bad juju happening in their house. It starts from your psychology. It's deeply embedded in you. So the fact that you can feel comfortable having a cross in your house, that cross is an altar. That cross is an altar. That crucifix is an altar. That rosary is an altar that you're carrying within yourself. The same way we carry our ancestors, and we will wear our cowrie shells, we will wrap our head, we will wear our beads. We are adorning ourselves with our ancestral altars on our bodies. So find the polarities in each side and ask yourself, what is informing your fear? Is your fear real, or have you been taught to fear something? Because we've been taught to fear the unknown. And again, do not be, for me, I've told my ancestors, I've told my friends and the people that I work with, my clients, you're on the right path if you're scared, if you're terrified, because you're out of your comfort zone. You are on the right path. If you stay doing the same thing, what is familiar to you, you'll always feel like, I'm okay where I am. I don't need to step out into unknown. But if you're scared, take yourself gently, give yourself a lot of grace. Ideally, have a support system. I think there's a network of wonderful ladies here. If you have access to your elders, if your parents are that open-minded, your grandparents, have a support system that can tell you it's okay. Because that's the awakening that I had, even with me choosing to identify as Waithera Wajiko, that somebody told me that call out the name Waithera and we will answer you. Every Waithera that has ever been before you. It's basically calling your own name and choosing to believe that, you know, you are the personification of so much. And that is what the Western world today will tell people and sell it to them as epigenetics, right? The traumas that happened 30 centuries ago, those are the things that you're carrying today. It's not just trauma. It's also the wins of these people. It's their spiritual gift. I personally come from a long line of diviners. And when I turned 20 years old, all of a sudden, I feel that strong call to read bones, to read cowrie shells. Why? Because it is in me. I didn't have to go anywhere for anybody to tell me that this is something that I need to do. So because it awakened in me, I started now to intentionally seek out elders that can teach me this craft. So everything has a polarity to it, the extreme end of everything. But sometimes the best you can do, if you're brave and it will take time, you will find yourself on the opposite end. But for majority of the time, a lot of us exist on the threshold a lot. You'll tell somebody, I started getting my spiritual calling and I wanting to know more about my lineage and my language and all of those since 2020, but I've never taken the plunge. Some people take a year, some people take a month, some people take 5 years to step into that unknown. But truly, all of it is an initiation process. So I think I'll leave it at that, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. And then I feel again, like with the other speakers, I feel like I have so many questions and I feel like we don't have enough time. I honestly think that the only way I can have enough time is to have each one of you with at least 2 hours each. Then everyone can really ask all the questions they want. I don't know if the Q&A is working because I'm not seeing any questions there, but I see a lot of reactions, a lot of them. What it's not showing, I don't know what's happening because it's just I'm not seeing any Q&As. Can someone let me know if you have access? No, you have no access. Okay, now I see it. Now I see it. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Emil says it's working. Anyway, we'll wait for someone to ask a question. But in the meantime, yeah, I was going to ask another question. You mentioned things like ornaments, and you mentioned also things like an altar is not the same. An altar is not what we think it is. It could be something else. So, for example, a rosary, a cross, anything like that. So it doesn't literally have to be a candle and a table and pictures. So then you also mentioned things like ornaments, and immediately I went back to our ancestors, our Kikuyu ancestors, and I started to remember the kind of jewelry they would wear around the ears. You know, all the decorations they had, and I'm wondering what you think. Do you think that, you know, all these things that we wear in our culture, or even other, doesn't have to be Kikuyu, what do you think about them? Do you think they have some sort of spiritual significance? I know there's a cultural one, but spiritually, do you think there's some sort of significance to them?
I do think so, especially in the capacity of wearing very specific materials such as metals like the copper, the brass, the iron, the steel. You will find that most warriors, particularly in the Abantu communities all throughout the African continent, would wear a mixture of brass and iron, you know, cufflets and anklets for a very specific reason. It's also one of the reasons that you will see that in the Western world, when people are trying to ward off like evil spirits, they will hammer iron nails at their front doors. So it sort of has the same you know, connotations in the sense that some people would wear particular metals and ornaments for the purposes of protection. Copper, we know that it's very significant in detoxing the body. So always having the copper and the copper bracelets and anklets on you for the purposes of helping your body just in the process of filtering your blood. In a spiritual sense, I think it just truly identifies us. Both culturally, I don't think you can separate culture and spirituality personally. So I think it identifies us specifically with those lineages. And I find that that's why I say that my ancestors are not confined in those human things of language and all the likes, because in my Kikuyu homeland, I adorn myself in cowrie shells everywhere. And I go to Yoruba land and I will fit right in, because they also love to adorn themselves with the same things, maybe for different reasons, but you understand, there's those sorts of similarities. So I do think there's a lot of spiritual connotations to it in the capacity of what those ornaments, the purposes that they serve, both traditionally and also maybe on a personal level in terms of what they mean to you or what they symbolize to you. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Tabiso, I think, wants to ask something. Do you want to ask something or do you want to type it? Go ahead and ask.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Um, this is really amazing, and I feel like I should sit and not saying anything. I might end up mansplaining things, but I love this engagement, and I'm South African from Mapulaneng, and I connected with Dr. Mazibuko. So one thing that I feel like is I wasn't sure, but now is a confirmation that as Africans, we actually have a one line of God, or on one line of Botu or Ubuntu. Because from Waithera, when she acknowledged the living dead, some they call them the ancestors, is the same thing as some of us in South Africa. And that's why in some practice, at least in Mapulan and Swazi, a baby you don't name a baby before it is born. You have to name the baby when it's born, and all these astrological signs and events that happen that day, they might name the baby according to that. That's why there's tabiso. It means something. And Dr. Mazibuko could also talk about Mmatshepo. There's Mapule, which is related to rain. There's Letabo. So all those links to nature and astrology. And all this is something that as Africans, if we can check and see the kingdoms or queendoms that we have, we all call on our ancestors that every time you do something, Zulu kings, they have sessions before they put the king to the throne, that they have to go consult and pray and get the permission that when the king is there or queen is there, all these other things that are not positive should be faded away or pushed away. So as a man, I'm going to sit back, not say anything that I might end up being out of context, but I appreciate this moments of Africa, because certain things we have been taken for granted in many ways. But platform like this and the way that our sisters everywhere around the globe are now taking their rightful place, this is going to change, because some of it is that most men, we are just gatekeepers, and we become the easier sign of capitalism and control. But sometimes we don't even see that. But we just say, yeah, we are energetic, we are hardworking, but those are the things that we are taught, the same way that religion taught us. Like, you are the man there, but you find out most of the time we don't even understand what women have done or they keep doing. That's the mere fact that they can carry a being for 9 months, all this emotion going on. We don't understand that. And when they are tired, then we feel like they changed, and then we react instead of trying to learn and understand. So I like this platform, and I wish many more conversation can work. All these issues of xenophobia and looking Afrophobia, I believe, is going to go away because we are talking. The problem is that most of the time when we're not talking, I would say, oh, Kenyans think this about South African, Rwandan think this about South African, Nigerian. It's all this thing because we don't talk. But if there's conversation, this is good. We're going to be one someday soon. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you so much, Tabiso. Thank you so much. And I really I brought you up, obviously, because we know each other. So Tabiso and I, we speak almost every day about the same things we're talking about here, because we are both Pan-Africanists. And I think Dr. Mazibuko, was it Tabiso who sent you the the application? It's probably Tabiso, yeah?
I think so. So. I'll check my DMs. And the funny thing is, we're actually from the same place. I'm also from Mapulaneng. So small, the world is getting smaller and smaller.
Yes,
it is. And you know what? I love that because the whole entire panel was just women. That's another reason why I wanted Tabiso to come up and just for everyone to hear his voice and to also remind the men. And here, I mean, everyone is welcome, every gender, whether you're non-binary, whether you are however you identify. So I think we need more of these conversations, like Tabiso said, because sometimes we have these preconceived notions about people because they're from a different country or a different tribe or a different continent. So the more of these conversations we have, the better. And I really love that Waithera Karanja also connected. I was listening very, very keenly, and you kept connecting to different parts of Africa, and you didn't just remain in our Kikuyu community. So I love that, because it shows the generosity that we have as African people, and it also helps me imagine what we would have been, or what we are going to be, what we are working towards, without the barriers of colonialism. And I love that you also brought up how we are taught to do this because of religion. We are taught to do this because of this. How do we break away from that? And how do we break away from that, not just as one tribe, but as people from different parts of the continent? So I love this, and I love that everything that we've learned here today was very connected. It's about community. And I have to tell you the truth, like I feel, and it's not just now, every time I do these sessions with fellow Africans, I do feel like I'm resting. It doesn't feel like work, because it's not work to me. It feels like coming together with family. And it feels like, it also kind of feels like therapy. And I don't mean therapy in the Western way, but I think you understand me, where you can just be yourself. I don't come into this and feel like I have to limit myself, change my tone, change my facial expressions, because I know as Africans, we can read them very well, because we know we have those, ways we speak with our expressions like other people, but we have our own special ones. But I feel like I can just come here and be myself. I can ask any question, and I always feel like I'm learning so much. Like I remember when Vibya started, I felt like, oh my God, like I felt like I was a child back in, I think, high school, and I was really amazed. And this is the beauty of Africans. We are so talented. We are so exposed. We know so much. And the way we're able to make connections between different topics, different communities, and different issues within the community, this is This is magnificent, and this is what I want the world to see. And I hope that even after this, we can connect. And that's one thing I always ask people, whomever you listen to here now, whoever has touched you, whoever has awoken, whoever is awakening you, whoever is just, shaking you up, don't forget them. We have LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where I've met everyone here. So when you go back to LinkedIn, just follow their page. You can connect if you want to, if you find that you have something in common. If you need a service from them, if you need to work on a project together. Because remember, we have to relearn to work together, because this is something that has been taken away from us. We have to go through borders now. We have to go through visas. We have to go through very weird things as African people. So this is an opportunity to reconnect and learn how to talk to each other again, work together again, and just be in community. And I'm really, 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 really happy. I see we've gone 10 minutes over time, but it was worth it. So thank you so much, everyone. If you'd like to have a closing statement before we close up, please go ahead, and we will start with Vibya. Vibya, do you have anything to say?
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to say thank you once again for the opportunity to get to learn from each other and share. I think that one of the the beautiful things is just the diversity of our community, and also being able to just like I think accept the ability to be able to choose for ourselves in this time, right? To choose what healing looks like, to choose what community looks like, and how you'd want to engage in that as well. So I think that that's one of the biggest takeaways for myself, is how to continue working towards whether within institutions or just in my personal life as well, and in community, how to continue just creating that space for others, but then also for myself too. So yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing to see our collective growth. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Vibya. Thank you, thank you. Dr. Mazibuko, do you have something to say to close the session?
Oh, I'm so honored to be part of such a powerful platform, and I wish it grows. In fact, I don't wish, I know it'll grow. I can feel that it will grow, and the teachings in this space will live on for, I know I'm going to make this part of my daughter's, after school program. She's going to watch from the first episode down to the last one, because we can be so trapped in our own little worlds and forget that there's a world bigger than us out there. So thank you so much to the beautiful, beautiful queens that have shared. I have learned so much. Oh, these things, the things that have been shared on this platform have touched me so personally. And it's things that are just at the back of the mind, and you think, it's just me going through this, only to find that it's such, like Tabiso said, we need to talk. We need to talk. And these conversations are so potent and so beautiful and so powerful. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we are going to be connected even after this. Thank you so much, Dr. Mazibuko. And you know what? We will come to your page. I only ask this, and for everyone else, anything that you said you're doing now, if you need to give us more information, whether it's a book you're doing, or whether Vibya, it's something you're doing in the community, or whatever you're doing with your next projects moving around the continent, just do a post or something. So then people kind of, then they're like, okay, yeah, this is what she was talking about. So sometime after this, no pressure, but let's see that. And thank you so much. And Waithera, there's someone who asked a question. She asked, Waithera, you mentioned an online community. How can one join? So please answer that and then give us your closing statement.
Okay, thanks for that, Mary. So I think the person that asked that is Nicole, and I did share a sign up link. So it's just a community. If you have WhatsApp, you'll be good to go. You'll be able to join. And also feel free to join us for our book club discussion tomorrow. We will be meeting at 4 p.m. EAT, and we're going to be discussing Africa's Hidden Agenda, Africa's Hidden History, the Reptilian Agenda by our beloved ancestor, Vuzamazulu Credo Mutwa. So yes, all the details are in the chat I've just shared. So First of all, utmost gratitude to you, Mary Jokiwito. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you for curating such a beautiful space and connecting me with such lovely, wonderful, well-informed women. I truly feel very honored and very privileged and very, very thankful to have been able to interact with them and learn with them. Thank you so much to Vibya and Dr. Mazibuko. I think your contributions have been wonderful. And yeah, thank you so much also just for the platform, for everybody that has interacted, asked the questions. Tabiso, thank you also for your contributions. I think you said something very powerful that I'm going to share with some people who need to hear it. So yeah, thank you so much. And I also do have to give thanks to the ancestors that have utilized us to speak their truth and to share their stories with us in this space. That is all from me.
Thank you muno, nindacokete ngatho. Ngugite thengio no thengio nĩ rĩtwa rĩa thũngũ, koguo reke njuge nindacokete ngatho muno mwana witũ na nindakena muno nĩ ũkire ũmũthĩ na ũrathimwo. Okay. So yeah, I was just showing my gratitude in Kikuyu to my sister Waithera. So yeah, everyone, thank you so much. Thank you for the blessing of just being here with me. Every single person who's here on the panel, every single person who's participating, whether you're just listening to us and just taking up all these lessons and the energy, whether you said something, all of you, I can feel you. I know you're here. You don't even have to say anything. You're here, and that's enough to me. And thank you so much. And I hope that we are going to continue having these conversations. We're going to have another one next month. And I think I need to find a spot where we can have Tabiso actually, contribute a bit more than this. So let's organize and let's stay in touch with one another. So thank you so much. So make sure you connect or send or follow all the people who joined us here today. And remember, you're never alone. You have a community. So as we say in my community, never suffer alone. So remember to talk to the people around you at all times. So asanteni sana. Have a lovely evening or morning, wherever you are. But yeah, thank you so much. Bye-bye.